I'm in the wrong class, but that's to say, no, that's to say I've always loved your work. So I'm excited to be here tonight to celebrate a term night at the Nature Museum.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to be reading from my in-progress novel, Far Cry from a Woman. I'm trying to think about if there's anything you need to know with this specific excerpt, and since I forgot the notes, the paper with the notes on it, I'm going to say no. We're just going to go into it. But, okay, no. So we're a couple, one of the main characters is Leanne, and she has just returned home after being gone for 7 years on a journey. And so we're a little bit days past that. Sloane is the mother of Leanne. Wiley, or Willow, is the mother of Sloane. Aisha is the daughter of Leanne. There's a lot of women. A lot of women in this novel. And I'm excited to read this night. I've been mostly focusing on poetry, so I'm excited to get back into the story and these characters. They have terrible attitudes, and I'm excited to share that. Okay. That morning, a blush dawn came creeping up over the hills in Talking Rock. And later, when the sun was fixed high enough in the sky, an intense heat came crashing down. It was unusual weather for an early Georgia May, a crisp blue and clouded sky that intensified the sun, a wet heat that left people in town uneasy. Diane Joy Walker and her twin boys, who could be seen from the large window of a diner on Franklin Avenue, sitting at high-top bar stools, shifting from side to side, trying to unstick their damp skin from the red plastic. Beverly Moore and Dee Wilson, who could be seen from the arched and oversized windows of First Baptist. They sat in the pews amongst a full house of churchgoers, spanning at themselves, missing every word of the sermon. From the small window of a music shop in town, Douglas Taylor and Frank Douglas, who had grown up neighbors listening to the stories of the haunt, who kept its blood-red history in their old bones, who could be seen sifting through crates of records and music books. They had spent much of their childhood joined at the hips, and now, as grown men, had become interchangeable parts of a whole. Something about pain binding people, something about pain. Douglas and Douglas lifted their hats, swiped at the sweat trickling into the folds of their foreheads, and tried to catch a quick breeze. Everywhere people uncomfortable, everywhere people itching to get out of their own skin, everywhere someone looking for relief. In the den where Leanne had spent the night tossing, light filtered through the patio doors, pleated blinds, and gave the room a milky glow. Even muted through the thick and semi-sheer material, the sun was hot as it settled over her arms and face. Leanne's silhouette could be seen through the shades, half awake and swiping at the sweat along her temples. She could feel the dampness of her skin as she tugged at the linen shirt, trying to make space, the distance between her body and the discomfort. When Leanne opened her eyes, the details of the den were invisible in the brightness. She was momentarily lost, wondering where she was going, where she had been. For a moment, Leanne was back in North Carolina, waking on the golden silk floral love seat in Maywood's parlor. She was back in that room with the slanted darkwood floors, heavy-eyed and drowsy, scratching at an itch along her forearm, swatting aimless at an unknown buzzing, the sound at first too close, then far away, gone. She was back in that place where deep summers Maywood watched the sun rise from a sagging porch, the yellow front door wide open. The screen door where the cut-up mesh was wide open too, letting in no-see-ums and ladybugs, horseflies, paper wasps, if you were unlucky. Leanne was back in that old house with that old woman who had laughed like jazz and had few cares in the world. That old woman who had a habit of telling people not to worry over matters that didn't need worrying, who told Leanne that those bugs, like everything else, found their way out if you left the door open long enough. That old woman who was sure, so sure, that lost things found themselves home again. By the time Leanne stood, the hollowness which she had grown accustomed to, filling with distractions, had already returned. And even then, as the details of the den faded into focus, the wood-paneled walls and the rows of family pictures, the brick-walled fireplace and the beat-up recliner, the folding tray tables and snaking plants, she could feel the emptiness of the space around her, barren like a grave dug up and emptied of a body, barren like that time she had been split open, cut clean down the middle. Aisha pulled from the inside of her, empty again. Sitting beneath the old wood ceiling fan, which whirred and clanked and with every turn seemed one wobble closer to cutting loose, Sloane worried after the unusual heat. There was nothing left of yesterday. Not the waxing moon, just one brush shy of full and casting silver light. Not the windy, stormy skies which had gone by, blown through town just as quickly as it came. There was only the too bright sky, blue like the island water of her lineage, and the damp humidity. Thick, hard to breathe air, which was only good for causing irritation and loosening tongues. Everywhere, people spilling over, everywhere, secrets bubbling up. Sloane looked across at her mother, Willow Jane Harper, who had gone by Wiley all her life and who now sat with her hands folded across her lap. She seemed perfectly at peace with the heat, with what the heat could bring up to the surface. She had this look in her eyes like she was a woman full of knowing and ready for talking. Sloane worried after that look most of all, and Wiley, sensing the distress in her daughter, basked in the uneasiness. She had always, even as a child, lived in the silent spaces of other people's discomfort. Clark and Honey treating you good? Fine, fine, Wiley said, waving Sloane off. No better than you, no worse neither. Sloane could hear the insult, but paused only a moment before soldiering through. They're looking after your medicine and all, getting you walking, moving that bad hip. Wiley scoffed and reached for her water glass, hands veined and wrinkled, but steady. She took a slow sip and placed the cup neatly back over its water stain. In truth, there was no need to scoff, to huff about. Wiley was no madder than a woman waiting in line at the grocer, a little bothered, a bit impatient, but not really mad. Still, Wiley gave her daughter an empty shell smile and pretended otherwise. Composure was currency, it was power, and she had tried to teach her daughter this lesson her whole life. Wiley knew breaking Sloane's control was a way to line her pockets. She wanted more than anything, after all this time, to see her daughter hot-faced with grim lines and wounded eyes. In town, there were still a few folks left, simple-minded people, she called them, who took one look at Wiley and saw an old woman who blamed her forked tongue on misunderstandings and old age, and she just a little rough around the edges. Those simple-minded people who said her hard shell anger had a reason. Don't you know that woman been abandoned by her own mother? Damn shame. And don't you know she lost her husband? Bullet in the head, I heard, 1969, I think. But in truth, Wiley Harper had been quick to giving people trouble her whole life. Allowed herself wickedness the same way people allow themselves, an extra serving at dinner. She picked and chose when to indulge, but always it was a treat. How many months has it been since my last visit, Sloane asked. Many, Wiley said. So you're still asking after me? Yes, I'm asking, Sloane said. How kind of you. Sloane looked at her mother and then passed her to the grandfather clock in the corner of the sitting room. Curved oak wood body and gold tongue brushing back and forth, keeping time, ticking quietly when neither woman spoke. Sloane felt the whole room slow, felt the nape of her neck dude and her skin hot. World out there full of children with no upbringing, Sloane said, cutting her eyes. That's so. Bad-minded people shipping loved ones off to that old hell house down the road, shame. But it's better this way, right? Here with family instead of some stranger you ain't never met before. Wiley laughed, a wild crack of thunder, threatening your own mother. I suppose it was coming soon enough. I suppose it was, Sloane said. If I didn't know better, I'd have half a mind to be scared too, but these old bones sitting right here till the day they're dust. Got my faculties about me still sharp as a tack, and not you or some doctors getting me to say otherwise. Sharp as a tack, huh? That's what you're calling it these days? Sloane asked. Down there talking to the trees like they're gonna talk back. It's your sister down here I'm talking to, Wiley said. And at that, Sloane's hands were white-knuckle gripped over the armrest. Wiley narrowed her eyes and leaned forward. Yes, girl, down there in the woods, right where you left her. The grandfather clock chimed deep and loud, like the brass of a handbell ringing out over the pews of a church. The sound lingered, then silence. Sloane stood on two unsteady legs and closed the distance between herself and Wiley. It was nice to see you, Mama, she said, and kissed her mother's shining forehead. Then she stood and in the same motion swept up her mother's four-legged cane. Sloane dragged the cane well out of reach and tipped it towards the floor, sharp clack of wood against wood. Sloane continued towards the door and Wiley talked after her. There you go again, running. Where you get off running when the rest of the world got to face their problems head on. It's the whole reason I'm hearing it. Your own mother too big a reminder these days. Afraid I'm getting old and tired of keeping secrets. Afraid I'll tell the whole family stories about what you did to your poor sister. Sloan slammed the door, though she meant to close it gently, and Wiley sat there breathing heavy and a little winded, talking much too fast. She had nowhere to go and no people to see, and still tired, and still tried rising from the armchair, feeling her bad hip buckle. She tried mostly to feel the struggle and to be proud of her daughter, who had grown smarter after all these years, gotten better at lining her own pockets, stealing a little power for herself. Wiley sank down into the chair, felt the heat settle over her skin, and smiled, smiled, smiled. She thought about the wind whipping through town yesterday, bending the trees and its people to its will. She thought about the heat rolling over the hills and across the slick black pavement of that one strip of downtown road. She thought about how unbalanced and wild the weather had become, and my, what a storm was brewing. Run, girl, run, Wiley said, or them secrets gonna catch you. And Wiley, alone, couldn't help but think about all the secrets her body held, the stories, the curses.
Next we've got Michael Torres.
Anyway, I don't know if this sign down. It's such an honor to be here reading with y'all. Thank you for the invitation, Tyler, and congrats on the book. This is a dope little alum reading. Shout out to MSU. And thank you all for coming. It's a beautiful night out for a walk or for reading, so I'm glad you chose me here. Okay, I have a bunch of things. So I kind of feel like did you come in my last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of that.
It's like daisy chain.
Yeah. So I don't know if we took any classes together, but I remember you through this reading series, this monthly reading series down in Mankato called Writer's Block. That's an open mic, and a lot of time we would, like, the people in our cohort, we would sort of compete, but like to see who could write to the prompt. And so I've always like taken that aspect and idea, and I just loved it. So I use that in the classroom, and I do that with this Flash course that I'm teaching this semester. And I decided to write along with one of the prompts that I gave them. I didn't do it ahead of time, so it wasn't cheating, but the prompt was 8, like the number 8 inside. So 8 inside was the prompt, and then I wrote, and then I had to, like, we reduced it, and so I think it's like 230 words. So this one is called 15 in a Limousine. Liz on Miguel's lap, Marlene on Johnny's, me and Lorena side by side, her thigh against mine, Gabby in her quinceañera dress across from us, so much white lace like a cloud exploding, Gabby's cousin Daniel with the missing front tooth next to her, Gabby saying, "Aren't we having fun, guys?" Every time we hit a bump in the road, Johnny and Miguel would say something into the ears of their respective girl, and Lorena would look at them and then her hands. I probably said something dumb like, "What if the limo breaks? What would you do?" Nothing happened to or in the limo. Maybe I thought I was being a gentleman by not offering Lorena my lap to ride on. I asked the driver to take us to the strip mall where I knew a skate demo was happening. As we crossed the parking lot, kids tried to peek through the tinted windows. Who's inside? I could hear some yell. Eric Costin? Mullen? Muska? They slapped the windows. I turned to Miguel and Johnny smiling. The guys were by then strictly speaking in whispers to Marlene and Liz. I turned and pressed my face against the glass where I saw a World Industries booth giving away skate decks. I wanted to lower the window. I wanted to reach my hand out and be like, "Over here, I'm over here." So that was my only little piece of prose for the night.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I get nervous. It's good to get nervous up here, so. I have a long poem, but I don't know if I'll read it. You gotta keep my time.
Is that a challenge?
No. I don't know what time did I start.
Oh, I didn't start. Let's say you're at 2-3 minutes.
All right. So in my first collection, and my only collection right now, I'm reading all new stuff today. I have a series of poems called All American Mexican, where I sort of, it's my speaker, or me, parentheses me, having moved from California to Minnesota and really struggling to grapple with what Mexican American means to him at that point. And I've written those 3, and then they were in the book. And then all of a sudden, when the book, just because the book was done and published didn't mean that those poems stopped. So This is like if I died, you would find this like unearthed footage of this poem. And it's just called All American Mexican. This morning, I run the road around the lake where my homie owns a cabin. My homie rather. On the road, a white family strolls, adults a chatter, 2 terriers pull leashes to keep up with the kids on tiny bicycles, training wheels rattle. I recall being 16 and full of MTV dreams, how I walked through the county fair with the homies until Pomona police measured our steps and told us we were too many, that they couldn't allow such a crowd. I watched their hands as they spoke. I remember the word now, then, radio waves, the afternoon, and how it slipped beneath us. If this family were 16-year-old homies parading their daydreams through the LA County Fair, they would not have to be left lonely and gang-related. They will never know this, and I can't articulate how sad I am about their exclusion, this brick wall between us. I cross their path, decide to wave. I say, beautiful morning. All together they sing, isn't it lovely? When I was 13, I imagined myself wearing neon wristbands and a brighter smile, spiked hair with bleached tips, to be shirtless with abs. On TV, someone held a mic, and I calculated the pixels of each gesture, how quick a fan grabbed at their feet, hands in the air. I begged my mother to buy me a shirt from Target that read MTV Spring Break. I wore it all April for 2 years. When my mother gave it away to the woman down the street with 4 boys, I pretended it didn't matter. But the next week, there went Fernando and my shirt loose across his chest as he skated past. He nodded and I could see him there at the concert shoreside, swallowed by a scurry of arms that once accepted me. I like to think I've outgrown whatever I was, especially since now I am so academic and unthuggish. Concrete and graffiti clean traded in long ago for this coconut oil I cook with, this BPA-free everything. This morning I took stock of my organs and remembered this recess game in 5th grade called Suicide. All you needed was a wall, a dodgeball, and a bundle of boys. It was simple. Throw the ball against brick. If you didn't catch its bounce back, a gauntlet of tight fists swung at you. Our bodies sang for cinder block safety, knuckles knocking on a rib cage gate was a type of anthem, something to stand for. What do you call faith? We were too many legs bent. We were too many to be gathered. Spartan boys training. What a mesh bodies make out of melee. What are you bound to? Yes, you. I tangle all the time. For me, it's always been about how much brown boys can brave. Sunday afternoon, decades later, Santa Barbara, California. Yesterday, Bernie got married. So today, everything is tinted with thoughts of tomorrow, a nursery room blue hue. Me and the homies enjoy ice cream on the pier and discuss baby boy names. Steph is pregnant. We haven't kicked it like this, all of us together, in so long. Below us, rowboats nod. Jet skis cut through the blue, and foam charts the water. Seagulls circle loose scoops. We're all yelling into a brown future. What about Aiden? Aiden can be Alan in Spanish, or Juan. Fine, forget it. It's Luis Daniel. Miguel becomes Michael. Matthew, Mateo. But he won't even speak Spanish. Watch. How do you say that in English? What's that in Spanish? For an hour we toss names through the air. The seagulls widen their circle. This is the part I saved for last for you. The final scene. We're friends now, right? Maybe even homies? There's the river. And me floating along in an inner tube right there. Of course, it's summer, the kind that seems like it will never end. Let's say 18 years old, shirt off, arms over the water, a glinting Budweiser in my left hand while I strum the current with my right. Something you might see in a music video. My shadow with a westward lean. An afternoon scene so calm it looks staged. As if a minute ago the director called for quiet on the set. Action begin with a widened frame, then close in on flashes of sunlight across the river. Tiny bolts, shattered glass, too much movement for me to enjoy it alone. Sweat gathers on the band of my Philly snapback. Pan out, include the marsh, and I become so small. Once again, somewhere behind me, splashes and young laughter. Are those my friends? Homies, they should be, but I hear them asking for a wristband, my proof of purchase. I shut my eyes to the mouth of the river that's been calling for the ocean. Deep breath, then wind from the lit sky's frame. Sunset finally, and me there. I'm supposed to tell you I'm going home.
There's nothing wrong with feeling mad and nervous or
You're supposed to believe me. That's how I felt. Yeah. Is that on Mars? I should add that in to.
I'm clicking 15 seconds back on the podcast.
I I shut my eyes to the mouth of the river that's been calling for the ocean. Deep breath, then wind from the lit sky's frame. Sunset finally, and me there. I'm supposed to tell you I'm going home. You're supposed to believe me. Did you actually start keeping time, Tyler?
Yeah, last time it said, it said you've got 5 minutes, 7.
Alright. Okay. Maybe I could do the 3 more. Okay. Another thing I've been really interested in is like idioms or catchphrases or cliches, aphorisms, like stuck between a rock and a hard place and things like that, and like taking those and actually trying to flip them and use them in writing. And one that had caught my attention was I just ended up sort of coincidentally seeing a few people who had lost certain people in their lives posting like on Instagram or something, and they would say that they're at a loss for words, but actually they got it wrong, or what they thought it was that they were lost for words. And I just thought that was really interesting, like, and intriguing. And I was like, what would that mean to be lost for words? And then I wrote this poem, Lost for Words. When I heard you passed, I emptied each word I knew onto the floor, thinking at least one would help me get back from the fact that anything else you had left to pass down was crossed out now. But not one word knew what to do. I sighed to break each apart. For their O's, their collars and counters in my palms, plates of hurt, some feast. I knew you couldn't, but I wished I could ask if you remembered when we were kids, and when we wanted to cry but didn't, we'd say, that hurted, as if we could get it to move itself through us. The pain, I mean. I wanted it like that, the worst of it already blurring around me. I kept shuffling letters and limbs across the hardwood. Finally, I managed the word gone. Then the thought of someone drafting your last paragraph made me less lonesome for a moment. All those letters and forever, though, their stems and legs, and me forced to carry the hum they made. I shoveled the leftovers into a pile for puzzling. Each memory of you was still there, just without the heft. How fissured I'd become. I sat down under the lamp's only word. Oh me, oh me. I was such a new student to the flickering and stopped moon. I was blessed enough to get solicited for some poems for a lit place that, like, to me is like I was honored and blessed because it was like to me it's like very overtly or intentionally political, and I've never necessarily considered myself that. And so then I was like, I'm gonna send to them, of course, because I like the stuff they put out. But then I was like, I don't know if I write something political. So then I imagined, like, what would I send? And I was trying to imagine I need to send it to a friend first to look at it, and then I was like, well, how would I introduce this question and this dilemma to my friend? And I would ask them, like, can you look over this poem? I want to send it out, but I think they want something political. And then I was like, oh, that could be the beginning of the poem. Can you look over this poem? I want to send it out, but I think they want something political. And I don't necessarily consider myself political. I mean, I used to go to slams and spoken word open mics. I would sit in the back with my hoodie on and listen to poets spit, some of which was political stuff. The other work was just about love or their mothers or fathers or lack thereof. It felt good in that. I felt good in that space. Unlike in community college and away from the homies at work, when I wandered into my first and only Mecha meeting and someone said, okay, everybody, introduce yourself and tell us who your hero is. And I was like, Salvador Dali? But I only said that because I thought I had to name someone at least vaguely brown, and because I bought this book of his paintings that was on clearance at Barnes & Noble. Now that I'm thinking of it, I should have started this poem by admitting I don't speak Spanish. Maybe how I talk doesn't matter to some, but for many of those fools, it's most important. If that's going to be a problem, I'd say they should probably stop reading at this point. Okay, one time in 11th grade, I joined the Spanish club because I thought I should. And the only thing I remember now is that we went on this field trip to Alvera Street in Los Angeles. And at that time, my homie Miguel was locked up in YA for breaking the jaw of this dude who did him dirty. And so he would write me letters, and I'd write back, and we'd talk like that for months. Him spinning advice to me from the inside, me with my ear to the unraveled wind. On the field trip, I wandered away from the kids trying to speak Spanish at workers who had these faces like they just wanted to know if anyone was going to buy anything. Minutes later, I found myself in Chinatown and sat down for lunch at a small restaurant. After I went back for the Spanish club and my phone started ringing, I answered and was asked if I would accept a call from Miguel, whose name when I heard it sounded all boxed in like a photo of him had been fixed into a frame too small for his face. Then the voice I knew came through on the other side and he was like, "What's up, Pedro? How's everything going?" And I was like, "Shit, good." And he said, "Cool. Listen, I don't have a lot of time. I just wanted to see how you were doing." I had made it back to what I think is called the promenade by then. There were people throwing crumbs. I watched pigeons snap at the concrete. Then he said, "So tell me what's going on out there." Small children chased every bird into flight. Finally I said, "Nothing much. What about you?" I couldn't hear anything behind him. Then he said, "Shit, the same." All right. One more poem for Tyler because I've been working on this poem. This is probably, it's probably one of the two that's probably the hardest to write. And this is taking me like 2 years to get, and I don't know if it's quite ready, but we're going to test run it right now. And in the morning I showed it to Tyler when I saw him briefly, and he was like, "Well, take the first 2 stanzas out and start after that." And I go, "Okay, fuck it, I'll do it."
This workshop took place at a children's museum in the middle of a bunch of kids playing around.
Yeah. So if you, I'm not like, there's that pretty famous poem, the "Someday I'll Love Ocean Vuong," which is after the "Someday I'll Love Roger Reeves," which is after "Katie" by Frank O'Hara. And I wasn't trying to write to that, but I found that what I was needing, or what the poem wanted to be, sort of fit that sort of prompt as a framework to get this going. So thank you all again. This is the last poem, and then we'll be blessed with Tyler reading. Someday I'll love Michael Torres. It's my daughter I don't know how to talk about. What I mean is, I hardly ever write about the house where I pick her up when I visit once a year. The morning we met, she was almost 2 years old. There at the door I knocked on, I watched this child, my child, wrap her arms around the leg of a man she would grow up calling Papa. "Hello," I said. The day flew open. My hand reached to stop it. Sunlight came through the branches of an avocado tree. I closed my eyes. Every memory of her, a pebble in my breast pocket. Everything I love has a fence around it. Her face behind the screen door when she calls me Michael. Do you get me? When I don't think of her, my daughter is not my daughter. How's that for a shadow? The next time I went to her house, we sat across from each other on the kitchen floor. She held a red bouncy ball in her hand, the kind I would bother my father for when we left the grocery store. My daughter let it roll, and it rolled toward me. I held the ball in my palm and wondered how long it could last, this conversation. Thank you. Good job, Tyler.
Thank you all so much for coming tonight, and thanks so much to Michael and Ash for doing this. I'm really glad to share this night with you guys. And you're right, this is tight. It's like hugging my back right now. So about a year ago, I put out my big debut book of short stories came out from Sarah Band Books. It's called Eternal Night at the Nature Museum. And it's a collection of short stories. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from the book, and then I'll probably read something new as well. So, thanks. This first story I'm going to read is the only story that requires audience participation. It will take place after I count to 3, at which time I'm going to ask everyone to clap their hands together. So we're going to try to all do it at the same time. 3. 3. Oh yeah, we're gonna all clap our hands together at the count of 3. So 3, 2, 1. Okay. Great.
That's Chris.
Exactly. That's the point. Yeah. Okay. Great. The Skins. The producer wanted wet hands, sweaty and tense to where the sound really snapped. So my team detained the clappers in an overwarm anteroom beside the recording booth. We made them wait. Clammy, anxious, beating on the soundproof door. We're still in here. Eventually, they were released, palms moist, only to find their mark at the mic and fail her. Each time, the producer sighed. The perfect clap was somewhere far off, but she assured my team and I, reachable. She wanted trim nails, She wanted short fingers. I need compact percussion, she said. At noon, she called the bass's hand clap languorous. I need hands that don't take all day to come together. We brought in children, but they had no strength. We brought in brawny wrestlers, varsity, but rhythmless. And even though I could have made it match the beat and post, the producer wanted someone with an intuition she could sense, a soul she could hear on tape. She wanted my team to stop bickering. Okay, a chat about the proper pop filter had spiraled into a dispute over whether in a finger snap, the sound was in the friction between the thumb and middle finger, or rather in the finger striking the palm. Battle lines were drawn, mapping neatly onto two worldviews, neither of which the producer was interested in exploring right now. Thank you very much, and intern was let go. What if you just do the clap yourself? I reasoned with her, trying to distract from the episode. We'd probably have it in like one take. But this song was part of her Selfless series, records with pages and pages of credits. One is only built from a pile of others, read the pull quote from her interview, even though the album art was always front and back, full bleed headshots of the producer's stoic pal. No, Ziegler. She loved to put a touch of Dutch on the pronunciation of my name, even though I had never stepped foot in Europe. She had her own engineer in every country, refused to fly me out for tour. It's not my role to clap, she said, pressing the delete key to erase an entire track. So, I brought in music students who cupped their hands in exotic ways. It didn't take. We got creative, idiotic. We had a policeman fire a gun. Blanks, but still. It sounds forced, she said. One by one, my team began to flee, talking of union contracts, families, the sour taste left over from the finger snap debacle. It's getting dark, they said. Outside, too. Hours meant nothing. What were hours? The coming lump sum would float my team through another summer. The payday was out there somewhere, invisible, but within grasp. Marcus and I had decided not to adopt until I was established, until in my name was a stock you could trade. You're getting all their information, right? She asked from inside her stress-relieving VR headset. The failures, I mean. I need each one credited. Yes, I assured her. I was. And then I made more calls until my phone died. I wandered down the street, past the lofts, past the Pokeball place, and into the barber shop. And into the barber school. They didn't seem to understand my request, but I left an address. One man set down his scissors and shook my hand. The producer ate dinner, a family-sized bag of M&Ms, right there at the soundboard. Oh, sorry, this is important. I missed this. The producer ate dinner, a family-sized bag of peanut M&Ms, right there at the soundboard. It's important, okay. Because she'd suck the candy down to its furrowed core, pinch the nut from her tongue, and stack each one beside it. It was times like these that I'd try to break a clipboard with my hands. I'm still working on it. Perfection to me is a pile of trying. The pile grows high enough to be enough. You know, Ziegler, she said, I'm not paying you for an opinion. And before I could sulk away to send some emails, she softened, turned to me, and confessed that perfection was immortal. Omnipotent, yet quotidian, she said, like finding a drop dollar. More like a million of them all at once, I said. Our only agreement was that the hand clap is the supreme snare. No drum, acoustic, or digital sounds immaculate as that. Two hands brought together. To this day, I get a little kick out of any time someone calls a set of drums the Skins. When the barbers arrived, the producer was sugar crashed on the couch, face down, so I led the session, instructing them through the microphone. Just clap, I said, forgetting to hit record. And the four men began to applaud. My team was gone, so I cracked up all alone. My laughter woke the producer, who stood and leaned over the board, watching as they kept clapping. Who are these men? Barbers, I said. She touched the red button to capture their ovation. They work with their hands, she said, raising her arms above her head. A victory, a stretch. The song, you'll notice, is totally snareless. No claps, no snaps, no pillars prop up its structure. It marks the start of her formless phase. You can hear a thread throughout, soft in the background, applause like rain. And if you scroll through the credits, you'll find me buried there beneath a sea of names. I wrote that story the winter after moving away from Mankato. Some of you may not know, but this is a little bit of a reunion of sorts. I mean, all three of us are graduates of the Mankato MFA and MNSU Mankato, and I graduated in 2018. The winter after I graduated, I wrote that story and started reading it at readings, and I'm looking at my watch now, and it's like 4 years later, and I still read it at every single reading. So thanks for laughing along. I'm going to read a new piece, and then I'm going to read one last really short thing from the book. This new piece is, this will be kind of a risk, but yeah. I was inspired by Mikey. Last week had texted me and was like, "Are you bringing new shit next week?" And I was like, I guess I should. So this is a piece that I worked on during the pandemic, mainly because everywhere, whether it was from podcasts or from YouTube or Facebook or Instagram ads, everything that was being served to me was masterclass. We generally wear a masterclass where you're taught, how to be a master, things of all kinds, everything from writing the next book to making the perfect Greek salad. There's a masterclass for it. So, and probably just because of my data, all of my ads for the different things were men, and they were very intent on trying to teach me something in the 5 minutes before I skipped the ad. So anyway, it inspired this piece kind of, and it's called Masterclass Testimonials. So, yeah. It's also in sections, and I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna say the section out loud. So one, okay. One man tried to teach me that even crossing the street was a negotiation. One man tried to teach me how to play the rings of a tree like a vinyl record. One man tried to teach me a power stance for manifesting what he called enlightened mentality. One man tried to convince me that the software had glitched by blinking his eyes repeatedly and emitting a dull drone with his mouth. One man mocked the fact that self-love was how the meek measured progress. One man tried to teach me that the photo of my son holding an onion by the tunic did not work due to the rule of thirds. One manager had given me a 2-year subscription as a gesture, his way of saying, "I'm worried a raise sets a precedent." He was hoping I'd learn something in my free time, a trick he'd use. When I quit, I tried to act surprised that he asked for it back. I decided then that I would use the service, ring every single day out of the rag of it. I wrote down my username but lied about the password because one man had warned against ever sharing your mantra. The same man also said, "Kill him when you meet the Buddha, not if." 2. The man who tried to teach me mirrors were for the weak. He was convinced that his Deep House remix of Heaven Let Your Light Shine Down was going to heal a hell of a lot of people. I still search for the song with a weird hope that it has some nights when I'm zoning off in one of these classes. The same man tried to teach me with a promise that it was the weak who would inherit the earth. This man peed sitting down out of what he called chivalry. Another man had a freckle on his dick, the precise size and shape of his own dick. For a brief period, this man tried to shut me up by letting me talk, and it worked, and I loved him, but he's gone. One man shouted, "Stop scrolling and fucking listen for once." And later that day, I was hit by what I now think of as my car. I was staring at the red light thinking, here comes my car. I don't remember anything about it except the way it came for me. One man tried to make me laugh in the hospital, knowing full well my cracked rib could snap. One man tried to teach me to forge a new rib from scrap metal, body spray, and spit, but all I wanted was to learn perfect German, which was what the promo had promised. And then a second man had the audacity to teach me what he called a little lesson about money by not honoring the refund policy. 3. I forgot how to do it 3 there. One man kept reminding me that I'd had a very happy childhood, but I hadn't yet learned how to tell him that his point, while true, was moot. Dad, now I'm talking to you. One man tried to teach me nothing, but instead of savoring this little gift, I fired off an email to the support team. One man tried to persuade me that what I needed deep down was to put my own parachute on first, and I kept telling him that's not how the saying went. The saying went, put your own oxygen mask on first. But does anyone remember the next step? The saying went, here's the cardinal sin of electronic dance music. The saying became, your subscription is running out. Renew now for a discount. Don't piss on my head and tell me the drought has ended if you're going to inherit the earth. A woman asked if I could tell the difference between the men I paid to teach me things and the ones who offered their savvy for what only seemed like no cost. My answer, are you sure my insurance doesn't cover this, even a little bit? 4. Long ago, at a party, a man tried to teach me that the world could not be empty as it was made of atoms. Then years later, I learned that atoms are made mostly of empty space, but I did not go looking for him, because around this time, I had decided to abstain from entire swaths of the internet. So I did not drag the deep recesses of the metaverse, hoping to rehash an argument that I would likely wind up losing again anyway. I knew the world was full of something, full of shit. I tried to teach the loud society of earthworms in my tiny backyard to worship me over the moon. I tried to teach myself to love exercise, but it only worked if I was listening loudly to men in my earphones jawing about the 10 central myths of freedom. One man I discovered during this period of menlessness was not enough to change anything about a person's understanding of consciousness, but there's never just one man. Except there was one who reached out months later to apologize for my experience, an email I deleted. One man swore that for a photograph of my feet in harsh light, I would inherit the earth. Back when I was learning to lift weights, I once found myself trapped beneath the bar, flailing, the video just playing, until, upon hearing my son's father's Ford pull up to the curb, suddenly heaved the whole weight off of me, iron crashing down, denting my landlord's floor. I wouldn't call what happened learning, or the work of God, or the fruits of proper training. No, I couldn't call it anything except for evidence that there are chemicals in me I have not met yet. 5. And this is the last section. I had less than a month left. One man said he was seeing God, and I thought because he was speaking direct to camera, it was me he meant. One man said there were only 7 stories. One man swore there were only 3. The last man proved that the number was none. One man said one true thing, but I fear sharing it will trigger the slow process of bullshitification. One man said that when you get this feeling, you know the one, he whispered soberly, nose to the screen, just go for a brisk, wooded walk. So I listened. I went and walked until breathing got hard and harder, and then suddenly oddly easy. And the trees started speaking to me, but I didn't know the language, which I swear was another longing for knowledge that almost brought me back to the software. I taught myself that. Almost. Anyway, thank you. I really owe you for this. You know, I'm almost out of money, but I do now have the earth. This earth, if anyone still wants it. Thanks. That's a piece I'm still editing as I read it out loud, but thank you for indulging. I am going to close tonight with a short piece from the book, one of my favorites. It is an ode. It's certainly an ode to poetry readings, and it's an ode to my favorite bookstore, which is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, near where I was born. It's called the Midtown Scholar, and it's about being at a literary reading. And it is an ode. It is not a dragging, I promise. It's called Midtown. The poet mopped the floor with us. The poet opened up like a cornered sky and fell on us. The poet felled us. The lights flickered. No drinks were ordered. Nobody rose for the pisser. The poet, a warned about force, put everything internal up for sale, for free, on the front porch of their voice, and we carried all that we could handle home. For days we walked slower for how the poet made us feel about trees. We just needed to touch every trunk, rub the leaves, smell our hands, compose dark, sloppy emails about how it all felt. Emails we then sent to the poet, who never responded, but did post online that they were not in a good place mentally, and then apologized for transgressions no one in the poet's life remembered. A picture of our sorry faces was taken for the paper, and the headline said, "The tops of these people's heads have been taken off by a poet." And of course we read the article, shared it, clipped it out, pinned it up at work, and it watched it watch us wither. All the while turning over the article's pull quote, "I think a poem is a dig site. I'm talking archaeological. There's some shit down there," the poet said. "And I just want one thing on the record," the poet said. "I'm sorry I couldn't get through the book signing without crying. I don't know what's wrong with me." We promised our loved ones, though later of course we failed, that we would never forget how the poet had trounced us. That night of the reading, we'd eaten dinner early or out or alone as usual, just to be on time for our trouncing. After all, we had come to be trounced, and we had been. We had been hurt, well and good had been dunked on. We had, by the poet, been altered. Our hands still sting from the applause. You know, we didn't know when to clap, and then we didn't know when to stop. Thank you. Thank you all again for coming out. I've succeeded by keeping this reading to under an hour. Not that I need to be congratulated, but we are gonna sign books over at the table in the front, and thanks again so much. Oh right, we have time for a question, and we can all answer it. We can each take a step. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, it's a little unorganized. All right, who's asking the one? No pressure. Michael, you've got to have a good question, right? No. All right, we're gonna sign books now. Okay. All right, thanks.
Ask this question there.
Yeah, ask us questions there. Thanks.